Greetings, everyone. Thank you for joining. We'll give a couple of more minutes for folks to gather.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Lexi.
Hi, Sana.
Lexi, should we give it a couple of more minutes for more people to join?
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. I think, Alexi, we can get going. It's 9:03 now, so I'm expecting we have a relatively small number of people here.
Okay. Do you want me to get going?
Yeah, let's get going.
All right. Hey, Tal, thanks for the idea, first off. I have a way in my setup where I can see all these things. So we'll see how it goes. But between me and Sana, I believe we can
Yeah,
hopefully manage, but we'll see. I don't know.
yeah. I'll also help with the queue. So if Alexi's screen is shared.
All right. Well, thanks for the suggestion, Tal. And so the first thing to get on today is a change in the way we're going to manage that, actually tracking the actions and the various things we want to do within the SIG. So last time I think we discussed about it, creating a Git board. Well, now it's there, right? So this is our board. Everybody should have access to the board. If you don't, let us know. I'm going to put the board link in the chat here. And the board, as you can see, is composed of various swim lanes. One, there are more the general topics, and then one swim lane per working group, and then three main columns, to do, in progress, done. So the various working group leads should have access to the board in a way that they can create items. And this is the way going forward that we'd like to track the work within SIG1. So instead of having a review through that GDoc, we'll do the review through that board. Any question on that? Any reaction, allergic reaction, good, bad? All right, so then we'll get started reviewing what we have today. So, and we're going to start with the SIG meeting changes, actually. So we had two action items that we took away last week, at least Sana and I, was to identify a time for this SIG meeting and identify a time for the working group 1 SIG meeting. So most of you have received the survey and I have received the numbers here. So I'll review them in a minute. I just acknowledge that, you know, a lot of the times provided within the survey are not super friendly to every time zone. For instance, you know, 9 a.m. Pacific time is 10:30 p.m. India, or actually 10 a.m., which is what got approved, is 11:30 p.m. India time, and we don't even talk about China where it's even worse. So, you know, I think Rani made some suggestions. Right now, here are the survey results. So for the SIG-1 meeting, the suggestion is we move that 1 hour later than today. So I know this is not accommodating our representative from India. If you know you want to push back, if you want us to run a new survey with new times, let us know what you'd like for it to be included. But as it stands, so the SIG-1 meeting onwards will be Monday 10 a.m. PST. And the working group 1 meeting has been identified to be Friday 9 a.m. PST. So of course, everybody wanted the same time slot as the previous meeting, but that couldn't work. So I took the second closest. Any question on this meeting time change, or actually new meeting? Because the working group 1 is more of a new meeting that will help us identify the target architecture and work, you know, the use cases and the roadmap for the releases to come, starting with R3.
Alexi Tall has a raised hand.
Yeah, a quick note. It seems that the new meeting will overlap with the SIG-3 meeting.
SIG-3 is a working group meeting, Tall, or is it
No, the main SIG-3 meeting. So SIG-1 main meeting and SIG-3 main meeting are right now scheduled for the same time.
So what is the main? I'm sorry, I just joined. SIG-3 is 1 hour. I mean, after this meeting, we have a SIG-3 meeting.
Tall,
Right.
can you mute? Is that your situation again? Okay, Bala, I did not get what you said.
Yeah, I just joined. I did not see the timing, Sana, what Alexis showed. But what I was saying is the main SIG release meeting is 1 hour from now. After this meeting, we have a SIG release meeting. Is that what you proposed, Alexis?
Well, that's a bummer because it's not in the calendar. So what we thank you, Tal, and we based the hour we proposed based on that calendar I'm putting in the screen. So
because
I think Alex is the.
This is your local view of the calendar.
It's only
yeah,
your calendar. You don't see the others. I think.
You're right. It's my bad. That's so that's my mistake. So I should be registering to all the SIGs.
But see,
Okay.
we can also move the other meeting around potentially, right? So because now that we can also
you guys
move the
in that
release.
situation, or you will have to do that because of this meeting change?
We would have to do it because of yeah.
Do you think so? Yeah, okay, so I apologize for that. Bala, Wim, do you think on a quick glimpse like this, it could be movable or not? Else we will just rerun a new poll and
Yeah,
we'll
actually,
make
it's a
sure
main meeting. It's a main SIG-3 meeting, SIG-3 release meeting, Alexis. So
okay. So okay, so
But I think, but Bala, we can move it potentially not because I think most of the people attending are very similar, right? So could we not ask the SIG-3 to move it 1 hour earlier? Problem solved.
So my intention is this: we could, but since anyway we are trying to find a slot for this meeting, right?
So we are freeing up the 9 a.m. Monday slot from the calendar, from the nephew calendar,
Yeah.
actually. If that works for you guys, because it does work better for the Indian time zones. So we can basically swap times between the two of us, 2 SIGs.
I think it's worth asking, right? Because let's ask because we have the meeting in 15 minutes from now, so we can ask the people, right?
Check with people and then let me and Alexi know if we have to. We'll rerun the poll. If we can swap, maybe that's one quick solution to this.
Yes.
Yeah, so Alexi, just to understand, I joined late because so many things going on here. So so is this the main SIG meeting that we are moving?
Yeah, Balaji,
Correct.
this meeting, the one that Alexi and we are working on right now, now with the poll results, we want to push this to 10 a.m. Monday, which will free the 9 a.m. Monday.
So what would be what that 9 a.m. will be used for?
We're giving it to you if you guys want to use that.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what. So that's
So
what happened.
basically, you're asking to swap between this and the SIG release.
Correct. Let's take it offline, Bala.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
captured
But
the
Alexis,
notes.
I'm wondering how is it on one front, I'm wondering how it is going to helpful to you, because in all things, SIG architecture, this meeting is more busier than the SIG release meeting, and you have more participants.
It's
And
helpful
it is,
to our chair, Bala.
oh, okay.
Yeah, I had conflicts. I was thinking of moving it. I was waiting for Alexi to join. Then we created the
Isn't it
poll.
too late for the East, Sana?
This is how the voting results came in, Bala. Look at the screen.
All
So for maybe
right.
for a few people it would be late, but then there are more people in the Western time zone who did vote for the 10. Otherwise, we had some more 9 a.m. slots as well, which did
All
not
right.
receive as
Okay.
many votes as this one.
Okay. I can ask in the next meeting, and then I can let you know. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bala. We'll follow up offline.
Yeah.
I see Dimitris, you have also your hand raised.
Yes, I just want to mention that with 10 a.m. is not really suitable for the CET time zone, Central European time, because it blocks the whole afternoon. And I just want to ask if it is possible to actually upload the recordings immediately after the meeting at some place and share the link to the Slack so we can follow the meeting offline, because I don't think I will be able to actually join with this time change.
Oh, because it's 7 p.m. in Europe.
Yeah, it's already late. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let me take a note.
Yeah, Dimitrios, the meetings will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. I'm doing that. So
Yeah.
So-
Do you upload those recordings immediately after the meeting, or like?
yeah, there's some delay based on the same day, not immediately.
On the same day, then it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Dimitros. Okay, so let's figure that situation offline, and then I'll get back to you with the latest approved time. For the working group 1 time, then this one has been scheduled to Fridays, 9 a.m. PST. I hope I didn't make the same mistake, and I hope it doesn't overlap with an existing time or an existing meeting. If not, then that's going to be the working group 1. And actually, for the time being, it's going to be cross working group 1, working group 3, right? So we're going to club these 2 working groups together, because right now it's a little bit of a stretch, right? We need to define the architecture, but we need to define the scope for R3, and so I think the same people are going to be involved. So that's the time that has been identified, Friday 9 a.m. PST. Any questions? Else this one will get scheduled probably starting the new year. All right, so I think this one is
Sorry.
approved.
Alexis, did you say working group 2 and working group 3 were merged?
No, working group 1 and working group 3 for the
Okay,
short.
sorry.
Yeah, the working group 2 remain as is.
Yeah, Karen, this is temporary suggestion. Me and Alexi were working on finding the schedule for the meetings, and it was a chaos with all the nephew busy calendar in the mornings. So we decided that since these both meetings are critical and they have lots of overlaps, it would make sense for us to merge this for some time and see how this goes.
Yeah, sorry, I just misheard. I thought you said working group 2 and working group 3, which didn't make as much sense as working group 1 and working group 3.
Yes, so basically working group 1, yeah, otherwise there won't, so there's no direct relation, but
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, it does make sense for this work to merge,
Yep.
and then we'll see how the working groups can go separate again. We'll see that.
Perfect.
Thanks, Karen.
Okay, thank you. Before jumping into the various updates of the various working groups, I just want to get one thing out, is the holiday period. your chair and co-chair won't be available these 3 dates. So the next 3 weeks. So we're suggesting to cancel the meeting. Any objection to that? All right. So
Yeah, Alexi, I was going to ask one more question. I think there are also 2 raised hands. And I have another
perfect.
follow-up question to that. That do we have a timeline before which we must give something to the automation SIG for the R3 planning and work? I believe this was something that Alexi and I thought between ourselves, that we are running with an incremental model. We'll continue to work on the use cases. We are even reviewing some additions. Alexi proposed some more additions to the template of the use cases. So I personally felt that this is going to be an ongoing exercise, and we don't have a strict timeline for cutoff date by which we must give all the user stories to SIG automation. So I'm hoping that this cancellation of a couple of meetings will not affect that timeline. And after this question, we're taking a pause, and if there are any questions, I saw some raised hands as well. Wim, go ahead.
See, I mean, okay, there is no strict timeline, but you have to bear in mind that normally we deliver in June, right? Which means that you have 6 months. So what I feel in general, if you don't have the use case in January, it's going to be hard to deliver them properly in June.
So we must keep in mind that as soon as we are back, a lot of user stories are actually created. The new meetings that we're creating on Friday, when Alexi and I put those invites on the calendars, and when we have the right representation, we'll start working in the month of January, and we'll start to pick out some use cases, flesh them out, bring them in the new format, and hopefully target to submit that to SIG automation before end of January, so that you have enough time to process that.
Yeah.
And this new meeting that we're creating on Friday would be a joint working group between SIG1 and SIG2. So you will actually see the evolution of those templates and user stories as we work. So you'll start to see them sooner than January.
Oh, and I think, I mean, for me, it's a joint effort, right? It's not about SIG1 versus SIG2 and stuff like that. So in my view, we are one team, right? But just in general, what you have to bear in mind is that because there's a lot of details to be flushed out from the use cases that take some time typically, right? So I think in general, I mean, I would just want to plant a thought that you need this amount of time to be able to accomplish something. I mean, and what you can also do is approve. It depends whether what you're trying to do. I'm mainly talking about something that really gets is not necessarily a proof of concept, right? So that it takes time, because we've seen it even for the run, right? Just look at the radio part that we did for R2. Although it was a small thing, it turned out that we needed the time just to flush out the details that we didn't think about, right? So, but it's I don't think we have to have a waterfall, but it's a continuous process. But so basically, you need the time. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. And I always make a reflection back towards the first release, right? Bear in mind that the use cases that we did, we already tested in November, basically. And we had like a proof of concept in November to be able to release in R1. I keep reminding people of that thing that we did in R1. And I think that's the timeline that you have to bear in mind to flush out a bunch of stuff. But okay, well, let's other people comment.
Okay.
Yeah, or maybe the other solution could be like starting releasing some small pieces before, like I mean, I think what Wayne is trying to say is like we don't want to wait until the last day to start implementing everything. So if we can make some progress before, and you know,
no, and that's so that's definitely the intention of creating that working group 1, working group 3 meeting, is to start flesh out these things jointly, not in a waterfall manner. Mm-hmm. So things become visible to SIG2, and we, you know, go back and forth to the use case owners, and so that's the reason we want to start this ASAP. not for it to be waterfall. Yes, to that point.
Right. And also, those user stories are documented. They're already attached to the working groups. If you go to the board, they're already attached and they're shared. The exercise of this meetings, the working group 1, working group 3, starting on those Fridays, is to basically get into the next layer of details. And along the way, another goal that me and Alexi identified was also the process improvement. So we'll come up with a process document that actually helps us improve template, improve process, so that we are more structured around how we are executing those things. So a lot is in flight. But right now, what we are suggesting is that we'll have to cancel a few meetings in December due to lack of representation on the working group to continue making progress. So we are saying, would we be okay with respect to timeline? And that's where we are trying to basically get that answer.
I see Tal has a hand raised.
Yes.
Yeah, just to echo pretty much the same thing. Let's not use the term handoff, right? Because if we're really moving away from a waterfall approach, it's ongoing contribution. And I'll point out this new Git board, I think, could be wonderful for this, because some challenge we had is, and we're still having a challenge, I've talked about it before, is that people create documents for Google Docs for everything that any proposal, everything. We have not had a lot of coherence with these. Most people actually don't put it on the Nefio drive. They put it on their own drive and then they share it and people ask for access. So it's a lot of times hard to even look at what the details are. I think if we move more work into Git, that will give easy visibility and also cross-referencing, right? Because we could actually do work in SIG2 and immediately put a link to the SIG1 issue for the design, and Git will actually show you things both ways, so you can see how much progress is being done. I think Git would be such a better tool for collaboration on this and to be more agile. I hate to use the word agile because it implies this whole philosophy. I don't think we're quite embracing that here. But we do want a more continuous cooperative approach. As Wim said, we're all on the same team here. We're just working on different issues at the same time. I hope that makes sense.
I'll definitely agree. The only thing that we don't want to necessarily enforce today is having everything within Git, like the use case definition, and we'll showcase some of them. Right now is GDoc, and I think that's okay. Some people actually are not even in Git today, so I think it would be too much of a lift to get there.
Yeah, but we could put links in Git to those documents at least, so
yeah,
we can have a source of truth. It's still very hard for me to follow all the conversations in the different work groups and the documents there.
It's better than Slack for sure, for searching links and for searching documents and basically organizing different working groups in sections.
Okay, and so with that, go ahead, Kieran.
No, sorry, I just got interrupted there at my desk, so I might have missed the last conversation. But if Chal was proposing that we sort of track the user stories from SIG1 and get done in this type of project structure, then it makes sense to me.
Yeah, and so it's there, and that's a great segue to going through the work groups updates. So I'm starting with the first work group. Okay, so now the meeting is set up. The next thing we need to tackle is, I think, define that target architecture for Nefio. Anyway, that's going to be the work group task to do, and that's the next deliverable that I foresee there. But if we look now more the working, and so sorry, I should be more comprehensive here. For the working group 1 cross working group 3 meeting, for the time being, Sana and I were going to facilitate this. Eventually, once we have the scope for R3 fleshed out, eventually our goal is to have these working groups run on their feet, and so identify leads for them. Today, I think timeline might be too short. So with Sana, we figured, okay, let's step up and do it. If someone has a strong willingness to be the lead, let us know, because we're willing for, of course, having more help. But that's as well something that needed to be shared with the team here. And I think this is captured here, like the lead for working group 3 and 1. Anyway, all of that is right now just one meeting, and this is Sana and I. Okay, So so now let's jump into the various working groups. And actually, I should start with working group 3. So we had a couple of back and forth in the last meetings. What are the required artifacts, right, that a user story should provide so there is enough and meaningful information for that cross working group 1, working group 3 team to identify the impact and scope of work for SIG2. So after discussing with SIG2 folks, chair, co-chair, we have defined mostly 5 additional artifacts. So we have a user story template today, and now we have identified five additional things. So let me get you through them, because the idea is to get feedback today on these 5, and if agreed, then each user story would need these 5 to be deemed, workable for that cross working group. So a deployment architecture. So the idea here is that using a diagram, define what the user story brings in the nephew architecture. Okay, so nephew architecture doesn't exist. We'll get there, but still, think about we have everything right now. So we want a diagram. Then we want to enable understand what are the nephew enablers in that deployment architecture. Are there new ones coming in? So here, think about building block components. Then the second deliverable is more a blueprint. I don't know if that's a good term, but the expectation here is to have more of a flow diagram. What is the detailed component interaction that the user story is bringing in within that architecture? Then identifying the operators that you need to implement the architecture. So what operator do you need? Should we need new ones or enhancement to existing ones? And are these operators, nephew related operators, or maybe vendor provided or open source provided operators? So this is more to understand how the code is going to grow and where the implementation or deliverables needs to happen. Then API design. If as part of your user story you envision new CRDs, then come up ready with a proposed data model, a proposed CRD. Now, all of the above is the people defining the user stories coming up with these things. That doesn't mean it's cast in stone. It means that this is the beginning of the discussion with that, working group 3 RX scope. So with the SIG2, based on these artifacts, we'll be able to best understand the impact, how difficult or how easy it's going to be to implement, and basically identify that scope and roadmap that we all are seeking. And the last one, probably most critical one, is how to test the end-to-end functionality that the user story is bringing. And so for that, what are the requirements? Because if we have a user story is coming up with, okay, we need GPUs to do whatever, well, it's important that we know so we can beef up the infrastructure where we're going to run these tests. So that's the idea with these 5 artifacts, if we can call it that way. So what are the initial thoughts from the group here? And if no thoughts, be mindful, each user stories will have to supply these 5 artifacts, as I call them. I see Wim has a hand raised.
No, this is a very good list, I think. One thing I would let's say, suggestion would, not everything is done through operators for us, right? So it's the impact on various components. So some are, let's say, operators or reconcilers. I call them these days more controllers or reconcilers. Operators is a packaging, in my view.
Yeah, no, you're right.
But also we have KRM functions, right? We have specializers, and so I think we should probably, so there is a list of things, of components that we have, and that maybe might grow going forward. Plus, what we also have to be mindful of is that when we go to, let's say, observability, right? We are talking about sidecar containers and various other pieces that we at the moment don't have yet.
Right.
So that's another set of, let's say, capabilities, if you will, that would have to be built to accommodate stuff like that, right? So for example, in observability, they are thinking or they are discussing an element that basically converts or uses eBPF to measure or get some data feed, and then build a sidecar to represent them in a special format into provisions. So that's not even an operator, it's kind of something different. So these are all examples of that in my view.
So yeah, no, that's
Does that
great
make sense?
idea. Yeah, so I changed a little bit then. I said needed software development, operator, reconciler. Then, so I put this example that you just mentioned. I'll rephrase a bit, but it's more about what do we need to develop. I understand that.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay,
thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Wim. Karen?
Yeah, just a comment on the use of the term deployment architecture or deployment blueprints. I mean, are these more, is it a component architecture maybe? I would have thought.
The deployment architecture, that one is more the component architecture, yes.
So it's more, so these are the various different software components and how they interact with each other. And then it won't be so much about, where they're running in Kubernetes clusters and so on. It's more about the interactions and the various different functional blocks. And the deployment blueprint, I guess that's like a use case or a sequence diagram.
Correct.
Sort of thing. Yeah. I don't know whether the word deployment there kind of.
Yeah, maybe it's not the right word. Well, maybe we can just do like this as well. The goal is not to be
a couple of different diagrams anyway. One showing the landscape of the components, and then descriptions of the use case flows.
Yeah, correct. So it could be just like this, and we remove one of the bucket, right? The idea is that we want this component view and the interaction view.
And you're right, Karen. One is a functional diagram that shows the relationship between the functions, and the other one is a sequence diagram, because that's exactly what we would end up doing with that.
Victor?
Yes, for end-to-end testing, I think it is not just what we need, it's also what we expect for that testing. I remember like John mentioned when we were like discussing about adopting OAI. So what was the output that we were expecting from that specific scenario? I guess it's very important, at least for end-to-end, consider the expectations.
So what are the test expectations?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we can capture this, yes. Okay, so thank you all for the great feedback. Anything else before we move on with this being approved? Oh, Karen, I see. Did you just
yeah, maybe just yeah, I did. Sorry, just an operational or sort of maybe it's getting into too much of the details, but do we have tooling that we want to use, consistent tooling for creating these diagrams, or is it a free for all? Or
yeah, that's good. I don't care. I think we don't care the tool. What we care is that this diagram exists. And as Tal said, what matters is that we can access the diagram in a freely manner. So if you're good with doing a, Excel diagram, well, fine, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be caught up on tooling. That's my personal opinion, but I'll leave it to others as well.
Yeah.
It's the pain of my life is the only. Sorry, Sarah.
I was just commenting on the tooling part. I think this is coming from the directions of SIG architecture, and SIG and tooling is a very prescriptive decision. I think we'll leave that between the SIG automation and SIG release to sort out. I feel we should leave this at high level here without going into the details of tooling.
Okay. Just one question.
Sorry,
Tim. Yeah, sorry. Tim.
Yeah, if you can raise your hand, Ravi. I've been trying to keep. Thank you. So, Tim, please go ahead.
Yeah, just to be clear though, because I'm just taking it from the standpoint of someone's doing the use case, right? If you could for these components or for these artifacts, if you could just give them a reference to examples for it. So if you got an example component architecture that you like, just make sure that there's an example there. And what we'll do is we'll point them to those examples, and then they'll emulate those examples. So examples are great. particularly since these guys haven't done this yet. So
That's a very good suggestion. I think what we can do, Alexi, is that when we start these working group 1-3 meetings, we'll pick one user story and together draft one user story in this template and leave that as an example for others to start following and bringing their user stories in the specific template. So that's a good suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah, and at the same time, I don't want people to be stuck. Oh, I don't have an example, I can't go forward. You
Right.
know, whatever you come up with is going to be fine, given this is new and we're a bit late in the game right now for R3. So don't see not having example as a roadblock. We will come up with example, to your point, Tim, but don't be blocked by, oh, I don't have example, I need to wait, please, because maybe someone will come up with something and that will become the example, you know. So I want to be mindful for that.
yeah, I won't let them do that.
I might. Okay, thank you. Ravi.
Yeah, so is this task actually being defined for folks who is referring to the use case documents coming from working group 1, and they are supposed to use that to come up with a diagram? So good to identify who the stakeholders are. Is it the SIG2 folks who are supposed to kind of I mean, obviously it seems to be logical that they are going to do it, but I'm just trying to say, is this using the use case reference to come up with a diagram by the SIG2 folks?
No, so the expectation here is whoever create, so the use case, the user story owner needs to provide these artifacts. And then in the working group 3 with SIG2, there will be a review of this artifact to assess the impact and build up a roadmap on when and how they could be implemented.
So, for example, Robbie, I'm sorry, since I just give them some context here. So, Robbie, for example, the use case that you're doing in O-ring, you're going to develop that use case, right? Then you're going to say, well, what's next? Well, what's next is these artifacts that need to be defined for that use case. And our expectation is that we start that probably beginning of January. Right? Do that through January. Work with SIG2 on.
Oh, okay, you're breaking up. You're fading off a bit, Tim. So my
I,
understanding.
what I was saying is that since you already have a use case, right? That you have, you define the use case, right? And then the next step would be to start defining these artifacts that supports that use case, that will need to support the use case. The expectation is that those would be done in the January process, and we would start engaging with SIG2 or the SIG2 members on these particular artifacts so that they understand what they are, right? And we'll be doing that through January.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. The reason I was asking is then you're basically assuming an implementation that exists. I mean, either we say that, okay, we back it off based on what is currently available in R2, or we are bringing in completely new, some other new implementations that's outside R2. But then that's a big discussion, isn't it? Or is it like, okay, simply logically, we want a system level view, which is implementation independent, and basically go from there for SIG2.
No, if
So
you're inventing new things, right? We need to get that early to them. So it's not you're using things. We say we're using this stuff, and it's there's no real change. Again, you're going to go through the flows. So if there's something new, because like the observatory, the observation frameworks and the service assurance frameworks are all brand new. They're developing those interaction diagrams, working with SIG2. I don't know if it's gone over to SIG2 officially yet, but they've got some new controllers components. So they're it's both of those. My point, right?
Yes. No, I was
I'm
thinking more
just saying
from
if you're doing something new, do it early.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
saying
exactly.
if you're leveraging something from ORAN OSC, that would be entirely new stuff, right? So then it's a much bigger discussion.
Yeah.
So I was thinking from that perspective. If you're bringing something, ORAN OAI, for example, right? Something or which is currently not being integrated into, for
and
which
that's
there is
fine.
no support and stuff, right?
So yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, I want to move on in the agenda. So look, Ravi, yeah, what you said is fine. This is exactly the reason for that component view here. Whatever you're bringing in the user story is what we want to make sure SIG2 and SIG1 can sit down and discuss. Now, whatever the implication of that is what we will discuss. And, you know, the easy, difficult, hard, not hard, you know, R5, R2, this is the type of discussion that will happen in that working group 3. So there is no limitation about what are these things that you want as part of the user story. Of course, if you build a user story with the goal that it's part of a coming release, then it needs to be achievable, you know, faster. If you want to have something completely new, so you see where I'm going, right? It's up on the user story owner to make sure that the user story is implementable in a timely manner.
Right. Right. Alexi, I have something to top up. So some of that confusion can be avoided. So basically what Alexi is presenting right now is an addition to the existing template that was previously approved, some enhancements to that existing template to make the user stories more consumable and with all the right level of details. So if this looks overwhelming for user story owner to accomplish all of it, I believe there is one missing piece of the puzzle is that SIG1, basically the working group 1, has not yet produced a reference architecture that might help you connect the sequence diagram and the way the user story flows through the various components. So if that's done, well, hopefully it's all evolving at the same time, then following this template will become slightly easier. And of course, everything is evolving at the same time. Just to put the things in the right context. And we might not be perfect with the first iteration, but that's the hope that we'll eventually get there with a few iterations and how things evolve going forward with the community work together.
Okay. So well, Alex is one comment. So on the first line, I think that probably some editorial thing, define what the use case story bring in. Probably you can, I mean, I don't know, probably the sentence doesn't seem to read right. So this is basically using a diagram, what the user story, how the user story translates to kind of an implementation in SIG2. Is that what that means? Probably, just probably could clarify
Correct.
that. But
yeah, no, that's correct.
Okay, you could clarify that because somebody reading that may not be
Okay.
able to understand what it means.
So we really need to move on in the agenda. Ravi, let's think up offline how we can make some of these sentences
Okay, sure. Yeah,
probably clear, because I think it's important that it's clear. But I really want to move on. We have a couple of other topics.
Sure.
So Bala, is it on that topic?
Yeah, we can move on, Alexis. I just wanted to know the story template that we defined. What's the correlation between that and this? So probably we can move on. We can take it private. Yeah.
So this is additional component of the user story template. We're going to add this in the template, basically.
Okay, got it. Okay, makes sense. Cool. Thank you.
This is a big gem, though. I feel. But
I know we know, but eventually we okay.
It was needed, Ravi. Actually, yeah. Thank you.
And Varada, I see your comment, and I think Sana addressed a little bit of it. But the goal is that yes, SIG1 come up with these things. Of course, the intent is for some of these things to absolutely be used as part of the release, right? When we do a release, then we have tangible artifacts that we can use saying this is what we're releasing. So right now, if you release, it's very difficult to understand all the things that we release because we focus too much on the code and not enough on necessarily the higher level architecture and design. And so right now, I think it's SIG1, SIG2, SIG3 to own all these things, and that's where SIG1 at least is helping.
Sure, Alexis. Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump. So thank you everyone, and Ravi will follow up offline. Actually, I'm just going to add in notes, else I will forget. All right, so then I want to go into the updates, and we're going to be quick, please, because I want to keep 5 minutes at the end. So I think, Tim, any update on your end?
Sorry, struggling to get off mute. Well, just the fact that we're working on the user stories. So we had 5 of them. We're in progress we've got 3 complete. We're in progress on the other 3. Oh, we had 6 of them, right? So
Yeah, I see 6 of them, but okay, yeah.
yeah. So we have 6 of them, and then 3 have been done, and we're reviewing them as a team. 3 are in progress prior to review the team. Again, we're trying to get all that stuff done in December, so we can start the extra stuff that you just showed today in January.
Yeah, I just Tim, I just posted the link to the
Yeah, I saw that.
to
Okay.
the other one. Yeah, so
Right.
we'll discuss.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Anything else on that working group? All right, so moving on to working group 4. I think this is, I don't recall who it is, sorry. Tal, I just know that I captured that you did provided the document on the current state of modeling. Everyone. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Tal, maybe you want to talk about it.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, yeah, everyone, I recommend you to review this. This is pretty amazing. It's one document where all the various APIs that we created are tracked and defined, with even some sort of interaction between some of them. So that's exactly the type of things that we want to see. Well, I see there are some open questions, which is great. I don't know if there is anything to add here, but thank you for creating this style. I don't know, is there any next steps here, or what's up with working group 4? Wim?
No, my question is how, see, I mean, okay, I spotted already a few issues, right? But the question is, how do we keep it up to date, right? The problem is, if you want to maintain this in a manual basis, it's probably difficult, right? Can we put some effort on making some tools to do this automatically? Because I have the feeling maintaining this is going to be very tricky.
Okay,
and I don't know how you created it, Tal, but it's probably, I'm assuming you did it manually, but my fear is to keep it up to date. Sorry, yeah.
If I may, Wim, I don't know if you want to try to brainstorm on tools or on ideas on how to keep this up to date. Would you be willing to just brainstorm, put stuff in that story here, in that task here, and then I don't want this necessarily to be on you, but if you can, with that initial brainstorm, I don't know.
Yeah, and you can do it, right? You can build tags and build a tool that does it, right? So it's done. I'm not volunteering to do it, but that's the fear I have with this, is that. But okay, I'll let other people comment. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just point out, yeah, I did it manually, of course. Part of the issue is we won't be able to make those semantic diagrams automatically, but yeah, we can at least keep the properties, find some way to automate it. It will not be trivial to do, right? Just because of the Go code and how it's constructed. These models are programmatic. They're not defined by UML or anything like that. So it's all in Go code. There could be ways to do it. And actually, I think some tools can kind of help. We have another issue, Wim, is that I would very much like it's not just automating this document, but also automating CRDs potentially, right? So there are tools, for example, where you could write all your models in YAML, right, as CRDs, and then generate the Go code from there, right? So we do have a problem with, what is the source of truth and what are we generating from it? But I will say that for now, I'm not too worried about continuity. It's more about bootstrapping a discussion, right, about our current models and how they work. And we know that this is going to change, but it's more about that discussion. And the document, by the way, it has a few parts. I started off with a snapshot, but later on I have a section called landscape, which is a big to-do. And I've put here some diagrams contributed by Vince, and you can scroll down and see references too. I linked all the documents created by Vance. I apologize, and by Bernard. And yeah, so the idea is for this document not necessarily to represent at this moment an up-to-date snapshot, but rather a place when we can start discussing it with the understanding that things will change. Yeah. But you're right that automating at least the properties would be a good idea, but then we would still always have to go back to the diagrams and understand the semantic relationships. And Wim, yes, I do recognize that there are some mistakes here. I wanted to meet with you and talk, and because I have open questions about some of the relationships between the items. So yeah, this is just starting the discussion, right? Not necessarily being up to date. It's true at the moment, but I think obviously this is going to be changing moving forward.
Okay, thanks, Tal. Yeah, so it's a bit more than just this, but sorry, I fade out for a minute. I'll add what you said regarding also the landscape and more the future-looking aspect. Karen?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I took this as being a reflection of design intent rather than actual implementation. So maybe both views are required in terms of this is how we think it should work, and then this is how it actually works to make sure that the two worlds are coming together. And ideally they're identical, but they may not always be. But the other thing, I guess, Tal, operationally, are you proposing once this is agreed on that it would move into the same Git repository as the models are defined, or and maintain it just in terms of making it easier to maintain?
Yeah, that two good points you made. Yeah, hopefully, as Wim said, we can automate the generation of models better too. As I said, even with Go code, it's a little complicated sometimes. And we also, in our Go code, we include some special validation. So sorry, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but something I noted in the very top of the document, I make some notes. A very important note there is the one before the last, where I say that not all of these types are CRDs, right? We sometimes use the word CRD interchangeably with KRM types, but actually many of these, if not most, never become CRDs, right? So this is just the GitOps nature of how we work, right? We work with these types in Git, but we never actually create custom resources of these types, not on the management cluster and not on the workload cluster. Now, there's a big implementation question here too, right? Alexei, we've discussed this between us as well, right? We're not using the management cluster to its fullest here. But as John has mentioned, and we're moving Porch into Nephio right now. And one aspect is that he's moving more things to CRDs, right? Inside Porch itself, some of its basic types. There's a big discussion here over scalability and other things that, I talked, if you turn everything into a CRD, which means a CR, then all this data, instead of being stored in the Git backend or whatever backend we choose, is now stored on etcd in the management cluster, right? So then the question is, well, how do we scale? If a management cluster supports 1,000 workload sites, all of these different types for management will be living there on the management cluster, right? So there's a technical implementation aspect here, right? And we haven't figured it out completely yet, right? So what we have right now, I would say, is kind of ad hoc. We've worked in a way that we've implemented things just so we can work and make Nephio do what it needs to do right now. But if you look at the Go code there, if you click on it, you'll see a mix of custom validation functions, which are custom, right? They're not implemented in Kubernetes. Kubernetes doesn't use the CRD mechanism to validate them. Yeah, so there's a lot of open questions here that we haven't figured out, but to an extent, they don't matter too much in terms of modeling, right? The models end up being the same. That's why I keep pushing us to say, let's call them KRM types. Let's not call them CRDs. I know CRD is kind of a shorthand, but CRD is an implementation detail that we actually don't use a lot. So if we can come up with a way to manage our types in a more centralized way, as I mentioned, maybe we can define them all in YAML as CRDs, even though they're not CRDs, then we can generate a lot of these things more automatically, right? Also internally in SIG 2, not just for this document. So I tried to avoid the technical aspects here. This is really about creating a discussion of the models, not about their implementation. But the implementation is definitely kind of behind the scenes. We have to think about it. Wim, I don't know if you want to add anything to this, but I think it's, I don't think you will disagree.
No, I mean, you're right, is that, yeah, I agree that we should call them KRM types, right? Because, yeah, as you said, there's a bunch of CRDs which are just used purely in specialization, which not even apply to, they are not even applied. Yeah, so they are just living in a package, but they are not applied anywhere. But yeah, so what I'm more afraid of keeping this up to date, right? So I suggested a few items in the issue, what we can do. So one of the things that I was suggesting is so what you can do is create like these tags, right? Which are special tags that we use and we build a tool around it and then we generate.
Sorry, gents, I'm sorry to cut it off.
Okay, that's a detail. Yeah. So let's move.
No, thanks,
let's move
women.
on.
I was actually getting very into the rabbit hole as well because this is interesting, but time is passing by. 4 minutes to go, so we'll review, if you don't mind, this in the next meeting, and the more detail and how to get there. But thank you a lot, Tal and Wim. I need to move on to okay. Is there anything on the working group 5 that needs to be provided with an update?
Yeah, hi Alexis. Am I audible?
Yes, Subhash.
So yeah, last week actually we did not discuss much on the user stories in our meeting, but yeah, we of course we discussed on the flow, how service assurance will be realized and how it will be interacting with the other modules like observability. So that we discussed. Yeah, these were the two major updates. But yeah, that will be keep on updating the user stories and with more details going forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll leave this then in progress.
Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you, Subhash. And before wrapping it up, I wanted to go back to Varada's comment from last week, and I think, Varada, what you were saying is that within the release, we should basically ensure that we have that we're showcasing all the various key benefit that we're bringing with Nefio, such as config as data, intent, operator pattern, package specialization, hydration, shift left, inbound rather than out of band. So I read your comment and I couldn't reply last week, but now that I read it, I think we're doing this, Varada, and this is exactly part of the things that we just discussed today about adding these new artifacts in the user stories, is to make sure that we understand what they bring and what they're seeking instead of in terms of benefit to the ecosystem, as demonstrated here. So I hope that's addressed, but I wanted to open it up to you if there is anything else you wanted to add here.
Right. Thanks, Alexis, for bringing this. Yes. See, what I meant is, see, Nefio has, in my opinion, two branches which we have to satisfy. One is brownfield, and another one, the typical things, the new paradigms that are coming in. For example, Helm is brownfield, but that's not configuration as a data. We have to support Helm because then only from brownfield we can move. At the same time, we also have to give enough, opportunity for the next, okay, let's move to the operator. Okay, that is one example. Second one, what I was mentioning, in service assurance, most people want to restrict Nefio as a service assurance enabler. Okay, well, it's true because Nefio cannot do end-to-end everything. But sticking it to Kubernetes already has its level of service assurance. So we need to move a little bit up, So otherwise it'll become out of band. So what I see interestingly, right, some of the features we take, be it ORAN alignment, 3GPP alignment, or the brownfield, Helm support, right, very much needed. But at the same time, we should have some feature which jumps, I see that in WG2, right? One use case identified for lifecycle management without SMO. Okay, so those types of stuffs should also be supported, right? It should not just remain as POC. That's my point, Alexis.
Okay, thanks, Varda. I think this is a fair point and well understood by by the use case story owner. Thanks for formalizing it that way.
Yeah, I have one comment, Radha, for all the work. I think when Nephew was created, the principles were the most important. Of course, they're still the most important behind developing every iteration. But as we evolved in the community and we learned further, I think one important aspect is the adoption of the Nephew principles across the industry in a way that makes Nephew usable in a service provider's environment. So we can come up with the most cloud native approach in terms of observability or following all the K8 native practices, but the adoption at the use case level, and especially vendors, and since you're coming from Samsung, I think it's a very good example to understand that how are the adoption for the network functions that we're using in the industry enabling us to follow these practices and stick to it in a pragmatic way in which a service provider can actually consume that in the short term. I think that's also one of the mandates for Nephew community to make things that are useful to the service providers, not in 10 years, in the short term. So I think that's something that we need to balance with adherence to the principles, and that's why some of the things recently happened the way you saw, the Helm adoption and some other some of the work that was evolving.
Thanks, Sana. And our goal is with Sana definitely to create a roadmap with timelines and an actual benefit to the ecosystem swim lane, if we can call it that way. Everything is not fleshed out yet, but that's the things that we have in plan with Sana.
Perfect. And great comments, Prada. They were actually strategic and high level, and I think they are in all of our minds at the moment.
Right. Thanks, Sana and Alexis. Yep.
All right, so we're 2 minutes over.
Yeah.
Sana, any last word?
Alexia, I think I don't have any last words. We can wrap up unless we have questions from someone else.
Bala, you had a question?
No, I was thinking I need to run to the release.
Let's wrap it up. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great day. And happy holidays for everybody. We'll talk in the new year.
Yeah. Thanks, Alexi. Thanks,
Thank
Sana.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, bye-bye.